Hello, everyone. Kind of been putting this off because I was gonna put on makeup and look kind of decent for this video, but you know, I guess this whole thing is as raw as it comes, and I think everybody needs to see the true side of what life is like when something like this impacts your life. So here I am, raw, stressed out me, dealing with all of this. Now, I know everybody has a lot of questions, and I'm probably going to be talking a lot, but this is only because I want to raise awareness for this so that even if I can prevent one woman from having to go through what I'm going through and from what my baby is going through, then that enough is just, closure for me. So I will start with the whole story. I know a lot of you guys know that I had a fever for a long time. So the beginning of the story is I had a fever. I went to the OB, and the OB is like, I think you have a UTI. Let's test for it. And I said, well, I don't feel like I have a UTI. She's like, no, it's a UTI. So I'm like, all right. I mean, as a woman, you know when you have a UTI, you know when there are things that are like different or going on, you know the difference. So I knew it wasn't a UTI, but I humored her and I let her do her little test, whatever. The urine test came back negative, as I suspected, but she insisted on sending it out to the lab to see if it grew. So I allowed her to do so. So she put me on antibiotics. She's like, take this, and we'll call you with the results. I didn't take the antibiotic because I knew it wasn't a UTI. 3 days later, the nurse calls me back. She's like, hey, it wasn't a UTI. You can stop taking the antibiotics. So I'm like, all right, I'll stop taking the antibiotic that I never started taking to begin with because I knew it was not a UTI. So I said, hey, I still have a fever. This is day 5. She's like, oh no, well, it's probably a viral infection. The fever should go away in like 2 more days. Just drink plenty of fluids and get lots of sleep. So I didn't worry at that point. I was like, all right, fine. The fevers weren't too high, and I was tired, but it wasn't like abnormal yet. So fast forward to day 7 of fever. Call the doctor again, and I'm like, listen, I have a fever. This time they're getting higher, and I'm starting to feel worse. There was a point where I couldn't walk anymore. I went to go put my kids to sleep on day 7. I made it halfway up the stairs, and I couldn't make it up the other half. I had to crawl up the stairs, literally crawl up the stairs. My 7-year-old was freaking out. I could see it in his eyes, and that's when I called my husband. I said, listen, this is not normal. This is not a viral infection. This is something else. I can feel it. We have to go to the emergency room. So next day, because we had to find childcare, next day we go to the emergency room, and they do tests. They do blood work first thing. Doctor comes in the room. He says, listen, your liver levels are like off. So I want to do a sonogram. He said it might be your gallbladder. So I'm like, okay. He's like, you might have to have gallbladder surgery, but we typically don't like to do that when women are pregnant. So we're going to have to, if this is true, we are going to have to put you on antibiotic for the remainder of your pregnancy. And then, you deliver, you have a C-section, and then you have to have your gallbladder removed separate and apart. I asked him if he could do it together, and he said no. And I was freaking out because I was like, I've heard gallbladder surgery within itself is like labor, and it's like having another C-section. So it's like I'm going to have a C-section and then go through a surgery that feels exactly like another C-section. I was just freaking out. So we get the sonogram done, and they did the sonogram of my liver, my gallbladder, my appendix. So the results come back. Gallbladder's fine, thank God. Although now I wish it would have been the stupid gallbladder. Appendix was fine. He said my liver was very much enlarged, but he said it can sometimes happen with a viral infection. So he discharged me and told me to get lots of rest and drink lots of fluid. Mind you, I was already doing these two things because the nurse had told me to do it. I was drinking maybe, I want to say 10, 16-ounce water bottles a day, and I was still severely dehydrated. My kidneys weren't working properly either. And so it was just a whole bunch of things. My blood pressure was high. My heart rate was at 120 when normal heart rate is like at 100. But it was like, whatever. If he wasn't worried, then I wasn't too worried. Got home. That whole night, I felt like I was dying. And I'm like, no, this is not a viral infection. This is not a viral infection. So I tell my husband, I'm like, listen, we have to go to the emergency room again, a different one, because I want a second opinion. This time, I stayed up all night Googling everything that the doctor said was wrong with me. The liver levels, whatever was going on with my kidneys, high blood pressure, can't walk, all this stuff. I had the chills. It was bad. I felt like I was dying. I thought I was like gradually getting worse and eventually was gonna die. And I was terrified. And, my husband knows that I can sometimes be dramatic, but he also saw how much pain I was in and how I was sleeping day and night, and that's not normal for me. I normally have insomnia, so he knew something was wrong as well. And this wasn't just something that I was like being overly dramatic about. So next day, we go to the emergency room and I tell the doctor, listen, I'm not crazy. I know this is not a viral infection, so please don't send me out of here telling me it's a viral infection. So he said, okay, we'll take some blood tests. And I said, good, because I have some that I would like you to run. So I had a long list of things that I wanted him to run in addition to it's like a blood infection test. Like they're like these little cocktail looking things. And anyway, so it tests for infection in your blood. So I didn't really think it was that, but I was I was done. I just wanted to rule everything out. And I felt like I was crazy, but I felt like I wasn't, I knew something was wrong. So he runs all these tests. And among these tests was something called CMV. So I had him run CMV, something called EBV. I forgot the other one. There was like another one, but that one was like very unlikely because you were like paralyzed from the waist down. So, I didn't think it was that, but just in case it was going to become that, I wanted to get tested for it. The CMV one, it affects the fetus, but online it says it's very, very rare. So, I didn't worry too much about it. Doctor's like, we'll do all these blood tests for you. I'll humor you. I'll add the ones that you want me to add in, except for the one with the, being paralyzed, because he said I didn't have any of the signs, so he wouldn't do that one. But he did all the other ones, which I was thankful for. He said, I'm going to send you home and discharge you with a viral infection. Get a lot of sleep, drink a lot of water, and the test results should be in within 2 days. I'm like, okay. He said the fever should subside by tomorrow because it's probably a viral infection. I'm like, okay. 2 days later, September 4th, I get a phone call at 8 o'clock in the morning, which I don't normally get phone calls at that time, if at all. I usually get text messages, normally no phone calls, at least not that early. And so pick up, and it's the hospital. They said, all right, just wanted to let you know that we got your test results back and you tested positive for CMV. So I'm like, okay, finally, I know I'm not crazy. We have a diagnosis. So I was just happy that we knew what it was. I'm like, okay, thank you. He's like, I need you to call your OB and let him know that you have tested positive for CMV. So I'm like, sure, no problem. So right away I hang up and I'm like, I call the doctor. I call my OB and I say, listen, you know, they just called me from the hospital. They said that I tested positive for CMV and they told me to let you know. And normally I Google things, but because he told me to call the doctor, I called right away and I didn't even think to Google it. And that virus that affects the fetus is so rare, I didn't think that was the one. The doctor says, okay, I need to set you up with an appointment with a specialist tomorrow. Are you free tomorrow? That's when my heart dropped and I knew something was wrong, because why was it so urgent for me to see a specialist? Why did I need to see a specialist at all? You know what I mean? So that's when I knew something was really, really wrong. Let me just give you some background information on CMV. CMV stands for cytomegalovirus. By the time adults have reached the age of 30, 75% of them have CMV. Now, CMV is in the herpes family, and before everybody starts saying stuff or whatever, no, I do not have herpes. It's in the herpes family in the sense that it remains dormant in your body, just like herpes does. And it only comes out if you have a compromised immune system. So normal, healthy people who have CMV, 75% of us that are 30, or well, I'm not 30 yet, but by the age of 30, 75% of the population has it. They just don't know it because they're healthy and their immune system is fine and it doesn't come out to play. Now, me being pregnant and my immune system is down, it decided to come out to play. And not even come out to play, because I recently found out that it's a primary infection, which we'll get into. So basically, if you are primary infection is the first time you're getting CMV. If you get a primary infection, your baby has a 70% chance of having birth defects versus the 1 to 5% your baby has of getting a birth defect if it's a reoccurring. So if it's been dormant in your body and your body already has made up antibodies for it, it's less likely to cross the placenta and infect the fetus. So, yeah. Basically, it's more harmful if it's the first time you're getting it. So, you get cytomegalovirus from everyday things if you're a mother. And this is the thing that drives me crazy, is that nobody talks about it. Nobody knows about it. My OB didn't tell me anything about it. I've never, and I research, if anybody, for those of you who know me like in real life, you know that I Google excessively. I like need to know all the answers. I am very like, I Google everything. I look everything up. Like, I have read what to expect when you're expecting. Like, I've never heard of CMV. Ever. Like, you get CMV from being a mom, pretty much. So you can get CMV from a lot of different things. So it can be sexually transmitted, or more than likely, usually it's not that way, but if most of the ways that you can get it, and the way that they assume that I got it, is from little kids. So little kids are carriers. But like I said, because they are healthy, they do not know they have it. And if it does, if their immune system is low and they do get it, they just get little like cold symptoms. You won't even know it's CMV. And most pregnant women don't even know it's CMV because they get like cold-like symptoms. If I would have had cold-like symptoms, I wouldn't have thought anything of it, and I would have never gotten tested, and I would have never known. And I thank God every day for, giving me this one up so that I can look into the best doctors, and I can look and research and be prepared for when he comes, for whatever happens, whatever life brings our way. A lot of people aren't that lucky, and they don't find out during their pregnancy because it's just the cold, or sometimes there are no symptoms and it's just there. So the way they think I got it is because, Jace gives me kisses every morning. So as his mom, I let him kiss me. And he gives me a lot of slobbery kisses sometimes. And sometimes he wants to share his drink with me, or he'll be feeding himself and he says, "You want some, mommy?" And I'll say, "Okay," because I'm trying to incorporate sharing. And that's how you get CMV. The saliva that's on the fork from him wanting to share with me, CMV. He doesn't know how to cover his mouth when he sneezes. He sneezes all over the place. If saliva gets in my mouth, my eye, you get CMV. Kisses, if he kisses me on the mouth, CMV. We're potty training right now, I don't think this is how, because I'm crazy about washing my hands, but you just never know. Potty training, if, pee flies somewhere, which didn't happen in my case, so that's not one of it, but I'm saying, like, these are everyday things that mothers do. Kids have accidents, they clean it up. If something splashes in their face, saliva splashes in their face, their kid spits a little bit on them, spit up. All of these things can give a woman CMV, and it's detrimental to people who are pregnant. Now, these defects that I spoke about earlier, and I hate saying it that way, but that's the way that it's portrayed on all of the websites. These defects are, some are minor and some are greater, and there is no way to tell what kind of defect you're going to get ahead of time. So my baby can be born deaf. He can be born blind. He can be born with microcephaly, which means he is born with a really small head and a small brain. He can be born with epilepsy and have seizures for the rest of his life. He can have seizures in my womb and die in my womb. He can be born with cerebral palsy. He can be born with eating issues and have to eat through a feeding tube. He can be born with calcifications on his brain and have brain defects for the rest of his life. I'm trying really hard not to cry because it is sad, but that's not the point of making this video. The point of this video is not to make you feel bad for me. The point of this video is so people know and people are aware, and women, if you're planning on getting pregnant, get tested for CMV first. Women who are already pregnant, get tested for CMV and make sure that you didn't contract it somehow. Women who are pregnant or about to be pregnant who work in daycares, be careful and get tested for CMV. Because you just never know. And if you're pregnant, wash your hands. Don't share utensils with little kids. Instead of it's heartbreaking, but don't let them kiss you. Kiss their forehead instead. I just wish I would have known these few things so that we wouldn't have to go through this right now. So basically now where we're at in my process is yesterday we were hoping for the best, but we got some bad news. Like I was saying earlier, if it's a primary infection and we would be worse off, and we found out yesterday it is a primary infection. My body does not have a lot of antibodies for CMV, which means that it is a primary infection according to my doctors. So the baby has a 70% chance of the virus crossing my placenta and giving him the virus, and in turn giving him one or multiple defects that I just spoke about. The crazy thing about CMV is that you don't know what's going to happen. A baby can be born asymptomatic, meaning like nothing is wrong with him, nothing seems wrong with him. And then 7 years down the along the line, he has hearing loss, he becomes deaf. And it's just so sad because it's like, how can he go? You just don't know. It's just everything is up in the air and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it's like, I'm sorry. It's like him knowing my voice and knowing all his brother's voices and his dad's voice, and then just one day not being able to hear us anymore. And it just breaks my heart. And I am optimistic, and I pray every single day, and I have hope. But I also want to be prepared because you just never know. But I do have trust in God, and I pray every day, and I appreciate all the prayers and the good vibes that everybody's been sending our way, and just I appreciate it, and I hope they continue because we're not out of the woods, and we won't be for a while. I just hope that my baby survives, because there are babies who are born and last like one day, and then they're just not strong enough. And I just hope that he's strong enough. I'm sorry. I just hope that he's strong enough and that he gets to live a long and happy life no matter what. Like, I'm gonna fight for him, but I just want him to survive. So like I said, talk about CMV. If you know somebody who's pregnant, tell them to get tested. If you know somebody who's gonna try to get pregnant, tell them to get tested. 80% of women who give birth to babies who are CMV positive don't find out that they are CMV positive until after the baby is born. And there are so many treatments that can try to help certain defects after the baby is born, but these treatments are better off given as soon as the baby is born. But people who don't know that their baby is CMV positive, or that they even had CMV, don't benefit from that because they don't know in that time frame. So please spread the word. CMV awareness. We need to stop it. We need to stop CMV. It's preventable. And if more people would just talk about it, then we can save lives. We can save lives, and we can save people, and we can save heartache, and we can do it. All of us together, we can do it. Stop CMV. Tell everyone. You might save a life. Thank you for listening to my story. I appreciate everything, guys.